The topic of today's presentation is face jugs, and I'm really looking forward to this. One of my favorite forms of pottery. It really allows me to combine my interest in sculpture and my interest in pottery, and also visit a part of our history which is just rife with kind of a deep, rich investigation into the past of America. So in this case, we're talking about face jugs, and you can see some in the background there that are quite a bit larger as I come up to them and take a look at the scale that these have here. These are made with the coil building technique that we used for our African pots. You can see one of those over just next to it. So these are quite a bit, maybe larger than you might be targeting. There's a couple of scales that we'll work on. We'll work on first a smaller scale that we can practice our sculpture abilities with, and then we'll start working on a larger scale. So today what I'm going to show you is how to make the smaller version, and those look like this. I'm going to show you how to make the basic pot, not so much to sculpt the face. We'll do that in the second video. In this first video, we'll talk about making pots this size. And I've come up with a really immediate way, a very direct way to make these pots fairly simply, and I'll show you that. Here's another one, which I can show you here. This is another of these kind of face jug pots here, and you can get a sense for its scale. And you can have quite a lot of fun with the putting in the facial features. So we'll talk about that as we go along. And then you can see also on the table here, as we go downward here, we'll take a look here. Here's a couple more face jugs. Again, these are a little bit larger scale. These pieces are, again, they start as a coil built piece, and then the facial features are added in as you move along here. And these are rather abstracted forms, which are pretty much more attributed to my interest in sculpture than traditional face jugs themselves. These other two pieces here by the artist Kemper Stone, these two are much more along the traditional lines. The use of a whiter clay for the eyeball is a sign of that. And then this has a little bit more detail than a more traditional one, but the traditional sculpting of the face jugs is actually very direct and very simple. And this here is starting to get more complicated, more involved, but still it's kind of a step between. And here as well, lovely. They're so expressive and just have a lot of exuberance about the facial expressions. So we'll learn more about doing that in the next video. But now what I want to show you is just simply how to work on creating the form, the pot that we will use to make our faces. So we'll start with that. And so the first step in the process here started here, so you can see as we work here, we start with newspaper, and what we want to do is crumple up newspaper into a ball. So what I'm going to do is just open up some sheets of newspaper and just crumple it up. And what you're doing is you're making a little hump mold to lay over pieces of clay. And this will all start to make sense. But you need two of these, and maybe for this scale, 3 pieces of newspaper might be sufficient for this whole enterprise. So it's going to create, I want to make a kind of a spherical shape here. And as always, we can shape it and hold it together with a little masking tape. And we'll just use this to create to kind of shape it into a bit of a ball. There's one. And we'll do a second one. One and two. So what I was interested in creating here was a very, very direct, simple way to create a little pot that then could be the foundation for our face jug. So there we go. We've got two little newspaper pieces here. Put this aside. And now we're ready to actually start building our piece. And the way we do that is we start with a ball of clay. And this is about the size of an apple or a large orange. That's a small grapefruit. We've got two of them. And we've got two of these. So now we just start, and we can go and turn it, make sure it's a nice ball shape. And then holding my hand here, I flip it, and you'll notice that as I do this, I'm turning my hands 90 degrees each time. So that keeps the ball of clay turning around. This is basically sort of a patty cake approach, and you can see already that I've started to flatten it out, and that's exactly what we want. We're making a big round disc. And you just keep going in that way until it gets to about the right size and thinness. And I'm turning it 90 degrees, so that keeps it moving around. And that's starting to feel pretty good here. And stretch it out a little bit. That's looking pretty good. So then I take this and I start to turn it into a curved shape. Start to curve it just a bit. Encourage it to turn into a kind of ball. And I won't go too much further with that until I kind of match it with this one. So I'm going to do the same with this ball. And it can be quite rhythmic. And quite a simple way to make a round slab of clay. But the other thing that's happening is we're starting with a ball. And so what's happening when we start with a ball is we're getting we're compressing and compressing and compressing the clay. And always with everything we've learned here, compression is a way of adding strength to the clay itself. So now I have a second one here, and I'm going to start curving that as well. Just kind of getting that little bit of a curve, and then we can use our ball molds here to just shape. What we're looking for, this might sound familiar from the start of our membrane pots, but what we're looking for is a completely rounded hemisphere, a kind of nice, even, round hemisphere. And the newspaper does a fine job of just holding the shape for us until we're ready to use the piece. So there's one, and then here's the other one. We'll just put that on there, and also kind of work this, press it around, just evenly pushing all the way around until we get a nice round shape here. So that's a good start. Now, whether you have a fork or some other kind of scoring tool, I have this wooden comb here that works quite nicely. So I'm going to take this to start with, and I'm going to start scoring the edges now. And as you've learned with other projects, you want to score thoroughly. You want to get a lot of scoring in, a lot of scratches. You really want to make sure that you open up the clay. And the first step of adjoining is the scoring. The next step would be applying slip. And the final step is pressing the pieces together, which we will get to. I'm going to take here is some slip, just watered down clay. And I'm just going to start moistening and filling those scoring crevices with the slip. Get a good job, good thorough coating. Make sure that the slip is really in all of those scoring marks. And then I'll just set it back on the newsprint and work on the second wall. And once again, so in this demonstration, I'm going to show you how to make a smaller form very quickly, very directly, not requiring a lot of hand building skills to start with. But just this simple approach, because it gets us a lovely little form that we can then practice our heads with. And you may want to make one of these or two or three of these, depending on how you get to it, whether you enjoy it as you enjoy it. And then it might be good practice to build up to start maybe trying one larger coil built piece. So again, really thorough scoring all the way around on the top edge and on the inside and the outside edge. And then I'm just going to go ahead and apply the slip again. And then I take these two pieces that have been prepared, and then I start to match them up. Hopefully they will match up fairly well. And we'll begin to get that match going. And the third step of any joint after scoring is number one, slip is number two, and then the third part is the pressing together. Very, very important part of the joining method is pressing the clay quite vigorously together. And what I'm seeing here is that one of my circles is just slightly larger, but I should be able to compress it and make up the difference in the forming process here as we paddle the pieces together to make a ball. So just compressing it, and you can see that it's quite a bit of a mess right now. It really is, if you can see it, it's really not all that smooth and wonderful at this point, but that's a really important point. You take a paddle here, and you can use whatever you have. This is a kitchen spatula, but you may go ahead and use the paddle that I provided you with a 2x4 or anything else you have. But this will already, you'll start to see it starting to form into a rounded form. And one of the rules, one of the experiences as an artist, probably in any media, but certainly in my experience with clay, is that at the beginning of any project, things get pretty messy. And if you were to judge just by what's happening initially, you might think, oh, this is terrible. I shouldn't even be doing this. I'm not any good at this. You might think you can fill yourself with all kinds of negative messages about what's going on. But really, all that's going on is things are beginning. And you are at the beginning of something. And as you persevere and as you continue and as you follow your imagination and your ideas and you sense what's going on and you see, okay, then as you're working it, you will see the piece grow and grow and grow more and more into something that you are imagining. So what I'm saying is basically that any project doesn't look that great in the first 80%. For me, it takes about 80% of the work before it starts to look pretty good. It's already starting to look pretty nicely rounded there. And so that's starting to work out really nicely there. Now, sometimes I have been known to put a ring, a foot on these, but as I go through the examples of the original pots, the original examples of these face jugs, they never had foot rings. What you might want to do, and I'll just kind of give you a general idea here, I'll reinforce it later, but what you might want to do is just put a little depression in the spot that's going to be the bottom of the pot, and that'll create a natural ring for it to sit on. Just a little depression with a ring there, and that'll be the bottom, the designated bottom of the pot. We're not going to start making the face here yet, but we're just making the pot itself. So we've started here, and the only thing we need now is we're going to need some kind of top, some kind of lid. Not lid, but a neck and a lip. So I've got a little extra clay in here, and you want to take that clay and what you might do is try and create something. You want it to be about the height, to be a little narrower and about the height you want that lip, the neck and lip to be. So kind of work that out. And then turn it into a bit of a marshmallow. It kind of looks like a marshmallow on top of your piece there. So you get that form, and then the next thing you need is your needle tool, which I'm sure I have in here, or something like a needle tool. Here's a needle tool right here. There we go. So a simple needle tool. And this is a trick that was shown to me by my professor, a guy named Conway Pearson. Actually, he went by Jigs Pearson. And it's a great technique. So you kind of like you're skewering a marshmallow for a roast, and then you hold it, and you just hold the needle tool very stiffly, and you're kind of extruding the clay. You're rolling the clay through it there, and that makes a beautiful neck for the top of your pot. Now, what I would add to that is if you want to have a little bit of a indentation for the lip, let's see if I can get a sharper edge here. I'm going to just look for a sharper edge over here. So here is a piece of plywood, and I just need this edge right here. That's what I'm looking for, that sharp edge. And I'm going to take my neck, and I'm just going to try to roll it around one kind of good, maybe one or two little passes around, keeping an eye, trying to keep it even and angled a little bit. And that will make a bit of an indentation for, you can see there that gives it a kind of a sense of a lip. And we can sculpt this out further. We can shape it even more, but now we're just going to join it. So here's a nice trick. What you do is you go through your scoring technique here again. And so there's the scoring and slipping. And what I'll do is I'll place it on top of the pot, and I'll put it exactly where I want it, and I'll just give it a little spin, and that makes a lovely ring of slip, and it tells me exactly where I need to score. And that gives me my attachment. That's where I'm going to attach it. So I score it, and then I'm going to put the slip in there. And what you'll notice also is that I can push down on this pretty well, and I'm not too worried because there's what we call an air armature in here. As I paddle, as I work with the piece, what that means is it's like a balloon. The air is trapped in here, and so like a balloon, it gives itself some support. It doesn't tend towards collapse because all of that air is holding everything up. Now, you can't finish it until you've eliminated that. You have to have at least one hole in here so that it releases. And we'll put a hole through this, right through this neck here into the piece before we're done. And that will free it up for a, that will free up our, make sure we get rid of that air pocket, that big air bubble. But right now it's just what we need to hold everything together. And then what we can do, take a little soft clay and help make the join here. And so I can just make a little indent here. And then I'm going to roll a little bit of soft clay in there. And I can put just a little slip in there. And then I'll just pack this little coil of clay in there. And that reinforces the join quite effectively. And then I can take a little rubber rib and finish shaping. I'm just compressing the clay in, making a nice join. And I can worry about cleaning things up really precisely after it's dried a little bit, and I can do some scraping and shaping that way. But now you can see that we have a pretty nice little beginning for a kind of a little face jug. And I can work on the foot here more. You can see I've got a little bit of an indent there for the foot, and then I can just start thinking about the face part of the face jug. The top here is still quite rough, and that's something we can finish off at this stage. If we're very gentle so that we don't misshape it, we can actually just wipe it a little bit and smooth it out, and we can very quickly get roughly where we want to go with this so that it's nice and open and has a nice pleasing sense of the lip here, a little bit turn outward. And the only other thing that we might need to add, I might want to put some kind of handle or finger ring to give that traditional aspect of the face jug. Most of them had a handle. Usually, most of the ones I see are put behind. If the face is here, the handle goes immediately behind it. But you can do that you can place the handle in a number of places. So we'll get to that in our next video. I'm going to show you something more about making some various possibilities for faces. So that'll come up next. But here, what you see is the starting point of making something like this. So you can see that this one here started just like this. And so our next step is to start sculpting a face. And so we'll work on that in the next video. Until then, stay safe and make art.